From indie classics like Chronicle to blockbuster hits like the Creed series, Michael B. Jordan has a pretty impressive portfolio. Let's take a look at some of his must-watch hits. Starting with his role in Chronicle. You might remember Chronicle as a breakout indie hit that revolved around three teenagers finding a mysterious MacGuffin that gives them extraordinary powers. The whole movie is shot in a found footage style, reminiscent of classic works like The Blair Witch Project, making it a pretty unique take on the superhero genre. Jordan's performance was pretty great. He plays popular high school jock Steve Montgomery, a charismatic dude who wants to encourage his friends to use their powers for good. In a lot of ways, he's the heart and soul of the movie, and also what ends up making it one of the most unique superhero tragedy films. Critics everywhere praised the movie when it came out, with many of them specifically pointing out the actor's stellar performance. Of course, let's not forget Jordan's other famous superhero role, where he shook the Marvel world as Killmonger. If you ask any Marvel fan who their favorite villain in the MCU is, chances are a lot of them are going to point at Killmonger. Played by Michael for his role in Black Panther, Killmonger is a tragic character, one whose circumstances forced him into the man he is today. In a story that's pretty packed with themes of racism, US imperialism, and colonialism, Killmonger represents the darkest aspects of man, which come out in their struggles against oppressors. To that end, Jordan brought his A-game for the role, bringing a kind of pathos to the villain that's rarely been replicated in other Marvel projects since. In fact, take a look at any discussion of recent Marvel villains, and you'll notice Michael's Killmonger as the yardstick for comparison. You can also see the impact of Jordan's performance, given that fans have been clamoring for a way to bring him back to the MCU ever since. Not one to keep himself confined to one studio, you might be surprised to know that the actor's also had a stint in DC. That's right, he had an appearance in The Flashpoint Paradox. DC might be having a hard time putting its best foot forward in the live-action department, but it's no stretch to say that they're knocking animation out of the park. A big part of that is their attention to bringing the perfect voice actors into the fold. And what could be more of a match made in heaven than Michael B. Jordan as Cyborg? People loved his portrayal of the hero in The Flashpoint Paradox for a number of reasons. For one, his voice acting ability is genuinely top-notch, bringing the exact kind of gravitas needed as the only real hero left in a corrupt world. In fact, most people can't even imagine another voice for Cyborg now. Besides that, the casting and performance also got fans and critics alike begging for something that should have happened years ago: bringing Jordan into the DCEU. Given that the universe's cinematic roster is undergoing huge changes, would it really be too much to ask for Jordan to reprise his most iconic animated role in live-action form? Sure, it might be a pipe dream, but it's certainly a nice thought. When he's not in famous action flicks, Jordan also flexes his acting chops on some more dramatic tales, such as his role in the emotional A Journal for Jordan. A Journal for Jordan is the perfect example of what happens when you let an action hero flex his acting abilities. The film is based on a real-life memoir, revolving around a sergeant in the US Army, played by Jordan, being deployed to Iraq, leaving his fiancée and son and recently born son behind. What follows is a tale of love, loss, and acceptance, with the plot revolving around a series of journal entries that Jordan's king writes for his son, also named Jordan. The journal contains advice on various topics King thinks about during his time in Iraq, along with a raw take on what leaving behind a family you're not sure you'll ever see again is like. Jordan shines in his role here, believably playing the kind of character who could impart lifelong wisdom to future generations. Fans and critics alike praised his performance, and it's easy to see why, given that it's impossible not to shed at least a couple tears throughout the movie's runtime. Jordan is no stranger to dramatic acting, and he's certainly never shied away from roles dealing with tough topics like race, like in his role as a determined young lawyer in the South. If you were to ask any critic what the best role Jordan has ever been in is, odds are they'll point to his time as Bryan Stevenson, whom he played alongside Jamie Foxx in the riveting, Just Mercy. Based on a real-life lawyer, Jordan's character offers free legal aid to poor black people placed on death row in the South, which leads to him fighting for the life of Walter McMillian, a man wrongfully convicted for the murder of a white teenager. Through the actor's eyes, we see a scathing critique of the American justice system and the ways it wrongfully and unfairly targets people of color. Critics took to calling the portrayal akin to a modern-day version of To Kill a Mockingbird, with some arguing that his role arguably carries even more weight than that of Atticus Finch. The movie was probably the best example of Jordan flexing his acting chops, taking the reins of multiple sequences that would put any courtroom drama to shame. Of course, you could argue that Jordan proved his skill right from his real first breakout performance, where he played Oscar Grant in Fruitvale Station. The Oscar Grant incident is one of the most shocking, heartbreaking incidents to come out of the 21st century, wherein a 22-year-old black man was shot in the back and killed by a white police officer with no provocation, creating a stream of social and political outcry and unrest. Of course, any biopic involving the character would have to be done with impeccable grace, something Jordan does beautifully as he plays the unfortunate man in the last 24 hours of his life. To many, this was the man's real breakout hit after Chronicle, with critics and fans everywhere raving over the subtlety and power of his performance. Of course, this was also the movie that got him his partnership with Ryan Coogler, something which proved fruitful for years to come. So, we've talked about the rest, but I'm sure you people have been wondering where the best is. So, let's finally talk about the mammoth that is the Creed franchise. When the Creed movie was first announced, fans were decidedly not happy. In fact, there was a pretty strong outcry against the film, with people accusing it of being a simple cash grab, bringing nothing new to the table and instead riding on the coattails of an old formula.
Not cruel, it makes it believable. We need real fighters in there to really sell it, honestly. And
With how some spiritual sequels have gone, can you blame them? Well, Jordan was able to use his charisma, commitment, and talent to put the naysayers to rest, turning the Rocky successor into something that now, arguably, dwarfs the very films that gave birth to it. A lot of this is because of Jordan's near-perfect performance as Adonis Creed, son of Apollo Creed from the first 4 movies. A performance that has brought Creed into the upper echelons of boxing movies, with the 3rd film in the franchise recently releasing to rave reviews.
Reject his own last name, we saw him embrace, the love of his life, but then also question and doubt, who he really is on the inside.
Well, folks, those are all the best Michael B. Jordan movies you need to watch.